have time to get on with life, but no, suddenly there's this sense of being disoriented because everything that defined me is gone. So these, I think, are some of the experiences people are having.
Yes. Um, yes, I agree with you completely. And what I think, when this whole thing started to unfold, and one after the other, we had all these stay-at-home orders. I started to think that it was like Chaturmasya, a ritual followed by sannyasis,
Yeah.
where in the ancient times, for 4 months of every year, Swamiji, as you well know, are acquainted with this, the people, the Swamis, would not move from their place. No travel, nothing, and everything would stop. And very minimal activity. It was a time to go within and recharge, rest and
Yes.
recharge. And in a way, I think this coronavirus, which I have started to call Karuna virus, because it has been really compassionate for the environment in some ways. It has been very compassionate for all of us in certain ways. What it has done is it has forced everyone into a kind of a you know into a sannyasa. Sannyasa means renunciation. So into a life of renunciation, where, as you beautifully pointed out, you cannot consume whatever you are used to consuming. You don't have the same props, as you just said, that one is used to. And also, as you pointed out, there is no sense, like a kind of a sense of self definition that you could cling to. You cannot cling to this self definition, because there is really, if you're not going to work, what are you? Maybe you don't even have a
Yes.
job or whatever it is. And so, in a way, it has become a leveler for everything. And one more thing, I wanted to get your insights about something that I have been thinking about. I have been thinking about the famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata, that one,
Yes.
where
Yes.
the
Fourth
Lord
chapter.
Krishna promises that whenever there is any kind of a neglect or a abuse of dharma is the way of life and the righteous path, that there that there will be some kind of a avatara coming. And so I
Yes.
wanted to get your insights on coronavirus as perhaps an avatara. What do you think?
Yes, yes, that's a very good point. In fact, one of the things I was thinking of when you said about Karuna and Corona
Yes,
is that in our tradition, in the Ramakrishna tradition, of course, the idea of the Divine Mother is very prominent.
yes,
And so we often speak of the Divine Mother as Karunamoyi,
yes,
Karunamoyi Ma. And
yes.
so in Bellarmat, where I was recently, and I just got back from India a couple of days ago, we were calling the coronavirus Coronamoy Ma.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it has made everyone stop. It
Yeah.
has made everyone become more reflective. That can be painful. I certainly won't deny the difficulties that many people are facing, and
Yes,
some extreme difficulties people are in. At the same time, one of the things we have to learn in life is how to deal with life as it actually is. Not as we want it to be, not as we dream it could be, but how it actually is. And this is forcing people to stop and to think and to become reflective. And also, as you were talking about the Chaturmasya, I was thinking in a similar vein that the old tradition, it's not just an old tradition, there are people who still do it, who follow the four ashramas of life, the four stages of life. And so there's the vanaprastha stage of life, where you go into retirement. Um, and so this is a trial run for the vanaprastha stage of life. That is when suddenly we have to stop our normal activities and find a way to live when our normal props are taken away. And so yes, the yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata,
Yes.
etc. That this also can be seen. In fact, everything should be seen if we can bring ourselves to do it as a divine gift,
Yes.
as something which everything in life comes to us as a gift if we know how to accept it. And so this
Yes.
also is a gift.
Yes. Please tell us, how do you go about, how do you think one goes about seeing this as a gift, Swamiji?
Yes, well, a bit ago at the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned the problem with the loss of meaning because people have a sense of meaning because of the things they have to do. I've got to do this, and it gives me a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, and suddenly all of that is taken away. And but in spiritual life, what we try to do is to find a larger meaning, which is not dependent on what I do, what I have to do, my duties, and so forth. All of those come with our uh, come under the sense of meaning. The sense of meaning, if we have a larger sense of meaning to life, what the purpose of life is, and so forth, then everything else that we do, family and work and all of that comes into is colored by that overriding sense of meaning. And so one of the things that we need to do, and we need to do it in ordinary times and right now where we suddenly see the absolute essential nature of this, is to have a view of life and a view of existence and a view of our own purpose, which includes life as it is. That is, which is able to accept life as it is. Life, everyone wants to be happy, but life isn't always happy. Everybody wants to have success, but life is not always successful. And the Gita over and over again, it reminds that labha labho,
Right.
jaya jayo labha labho,
Mhm.
sukha dukkha, siddhya siddhyo, samo bhutva, etc. Being equal in the pairs of opposites. And so if we have a sense of purpose, an eventual sense of purpose, which is beyond the changes of life, then we're able to move through the changes of life with a steady rudder. Otherwise, if our sense of purpose is limited to something which is right here, right now, in time and space and all of that, we find that life is oftentimes buffeting us from side to side where we can't grab that which we're looking for. But if we have a larger sense of purpose, then we find that we have something which we're moving towards when times are good, when times are bad, when times are going our way, when times are not going our way, when we're successful, when we're not successful. And so finding a larger sense of meaning and purpose, which carries us through the difficulties of life.
Very well put. Very, very
And
nice. If I can add to that, may I add to that?
yes, yes, certainly.
The
Please do.
uh, what I thought as you were talking, two things really, I clocked into. The first one was the need to see life as it is, as opposed to how I might want it to be, you know.
Ah, yes,
And this is really the essence of what we call Vedanta. This is the
yes.
essence of, this is the bread and butter of Vedanta, is to drop the subjectivity. And,
Ah,
to drop this subjectivity, and this, by subjectivity, I mean that we have a way of running a parallel show.
hmm.
There is Bhagavan's show, Ishvara's show, the goddess's show. Karunamayi's show is now, all over the world. She's making herself known. And then there is one's personal projection, in the
Yes.
form of raga and dvesha, strong preferences and strong prejudices. So with this, I color my own world and I try to live in that world. And then I don't feel that there is anything wrong in this attempt to do this at all, except, this little parallel show is, is within the larger show, and it keeps hitting against that, because
Ah, yes.
there is no, my Shakti as an individual embodied in a body mind sense complex is governed by that Shakti of Bhagavan, which is, limitless, which is, so my Shakti is inhibited by my mind, by my body, and then so you cannot fight with that show. So therefore,
Ah,
the the scales from the vision, the subjective scales from the vision, have to just, come down. They have to come down, so that I can be with the world as it is. And what is, we say, is Ishvara, which is
hmm.
our name for God. And if you spell Ishvara in English, what are the first two letters?
Is.
Is.
I never thought of that. That's a very
Yeah.
good point.
What
You,
is Ishvara? And that
every time,
Ishvara ultimately is, revealed to be I, and that is basically what it is. But even if we don't go that far, if we don't take Vedanta all the way, we still are looking at Ishvara. And here I think I'd like to say one more thing, if I may. This, we have this sometimes a funny idea of Ishvara as some kind of a guy in the sky, who is dispensing bad,
ah,
karma, or good karma, rewards and punishment to people. But that's not the vision. That's not the Hindu vision. That's not the
hmm.
vision of this dharma at all. So basically, what we are looking at are the vast orders of the universe, which are manifestations of Bhagavan, which are manifestations of Ishvara. So you cannot say, why is Ishvara, doing this? Because that's not a
Hmm.
correct question. The correct question is, the answer is because Ishvara is this. It's not doing this. You see?
Ah,
So this is what I have to, you know, I have to see that, this vast universe, which is confronting me, this vast universe which is confronting me, I have to make peace with it. I have to be okay with what is. That is basically what I wanted to say.
very good points. Very good points. And so, taking off of that, or and adding to it, in the same vein, first, one of the things that many people have, that one of the ideas that many people project onto God is God as judge. And God doing things to the world because people are sinful, doing things to the world because He doesn't like what people are doing. No, that idea of God we have to take out. That God is a punisher. God is castigating humanity. The coronavirus is here because God is not happy with the direction people are going. What kind of God is that? I project because I'm judgmental, because I like to punish people who don't do what I like them to do. I think that God is like that also. No,
Yes.
that's not the picture of God. Along with that, let me mention the meaning of the image of Kali.
Yeah.
Many people seeing Kali think, oh, that's the castigating mother. No,
Yeah.
no. The idea of the symbolism of the image of Kali, the with her four hands, two giving blessings and freedom from fear, and two holding the severed head and the sword, is not that she is a punishing goddess. No, the idea is that she's the mother.
Yes.
That Ishvara is the mother heart of the universe, whether we
Right.
see Ishvara as Krishna or
Yes.
Ram or Shiva or Ganesha, whatever, however we see. But the heart of the universe is a mother heart. And so the meaning of the image of Kali is that everything that is Ishvara. And if I take the experiences that come to me as a gift of the mother, from the loving heart of the mother,
Yes.
then I see the experiences I have in a very different way.
Yes.
And one of the strange things that we find if we begin to do that is that, and this is consistent with the law of karma, is that I begin to see that my experience of the universe is really custom made for me,
Yes.
as it is for everyone.
Right.
And so when I look at the big picture and see all of the people suffering, then of course it's very confusing, because it's, you see why all of these innocent people are suffering. But if I can let me first look at my own experience and see, I see everything that comes to me, there seems to be a reason for it. And there seems to be something I can learn from it. And all I need to do is to participate with what's happening.
Yes.
That is, participation means just accepting what is and dealing with it.
Yes.
And in that, I find that everything is helping me forward.
Right.
And then I can extrapolate out and see that that's true of everyone, if we only take that. And so that Ishvara, every time I talk to you, Mataji, I learn so many things, and I'll always remember that the Ishvara begins with is.
Yeah.
And so taking the isness of Ishvara, that life just is, that the
Yes.
universe is happening. Sri Krishna says over and over in the Gita that everything happens by his will, but that he does nothing.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not, as you said, it's not God sitting up in the clouds somewhere doing things.
Right.
No, it's just this is the flowering of the creation. And so
Yes.
when I take it as everything is a gift of the Divine Mother. And one last thing, let me just mention, and then in fact, let me put it as a question for you. That one of the things, is it not, that we can do as far as a attitude that helps us through this sort of experience is the practice of surrender, prapatti, that is surrender to God. How does surrender figure into the picture that we're talking about, Mataji?
That's a wonderful segue. You read my mind, because that is where I was going with this. Because when you said that, all this is unique to one's own karma, and then it's happening to everybody in its own way, and then you see that it's not personal, you're not been
Ah,
attacked personally. I was going to say that, that if everything is Bhagavan, well, in the beginning you mentioned the loneliness, the disenchantment, the loss, the severance of a sense of identity, and the feeling of meaninglessness and purposelessness. All that is part of the psychological order, which is also Ishvara, which is a
hmm.
manifestation of God. So this
Yes.
psychological order, when we look at it as the order, yes, if one is cooped up in the house for 2 months or 1 month, how long it will be, 2 months in a row, naturally there will be, fear, naturally there will be uncertainty, naturally there will be loneliness, naturally there will be a sense of severance from a purpose, and there will be a questioning of identity. So this is a natural outcome. And so when we talk about a natural outcome, it's not just happening to one person. It's
Ah,
happening to 7 billion people in the world at the same
yes.
time. So there you see the law. That's where you see the presence. So in other words, we have to learn to Ishwarize the emotions. And when
Ah.
you Ishwarize, is that a word? I suppose now it is. So when you Ishwarize the emotions, and then you see that you're not being targeted, that this is something universal, then you have that inner space to be able to work with it. You can see that you're not being targeted. You're not the only one you losing the job. You're not the only one whose future is uncertain. You're not the only one, who's losing a loved one, or who's far away from a loved one, who cannot go because of all these restrictions. So you see that this whole world is a web, and this is just, and your feelings of limitation, your feelings of constriction are included within the order. So then, that's where the surrender comes in, because that's what is, the altar. And that's why it is called an altar, because it has the power to alter these feelings. And so then that is where, the surrender comes from a sense of helplessness, from a recognized a sense of helplessness, that everybody is going through this. And so then we resort to prayer, and that is where the prayer comes in, because when nothing else works, I mean, nobody prays when everything is going one's way. There is no
Yes, yes.
incentive to pray. you know
Yes.
when nothing works, then then you think of dialing Bhagavan just like you dial 911 in an emergency.
Yes. As
Yeah.
one of our swamis used to say, that when everything's going well, no one asks, why is it? Why am I so happy? Why is everything going so well? We just enjoy everything going well. But when things seem to go in a way that I wasn't expecting or wasn't wanting, then suddenly we think, why? And so actually things like this have the function in human life of making us reflective. And also segging off of another thing, or just not really segging off, but just adding a point to what you said, by the very fact that this is a common experience around the world now, it's spread around the world, that itself, if we recognize it, it gives us a sense of connection.
Yes.
That
Yes.
itself gives us a sense of a larger life. One of the problems in loneliness and isolation is that we feel cut off from the larger life of the world. But no, by sharing experience, by recognizing that we're all in this together,
By
even just the
staying
thought,
apart.
yeah, taking a part, yes, we're taking a part in the cosmic life, in this grand yajna, this grand sacrifice which life is. And so that also brings, and then what you said, beautiful about prayer and surrender. When we pray, what are we doing? We're connecting ourselves through prayer to the universal, that which connects all souls, the soul of all souls, the isness of the universe.
Yes.
Everything that has existence in the universe is, but that isness is Ishvara,
That's
because
right.
Ishvara is the one who is. And
Yes.
so by praying, I'm connecting to the very isness of the whole universe, but it's an isness which is made of, which is conscious, which is love, which is wisdom. And so I'm connecting not to a material isness, but to an all-loving, conscious, awareness, which is isness.
Very wonderfully put. Swamiji, shall we take this conversation towards the look how we can perhaps look at some of these, the effects of this coronavirus as a gift. What are some of the ways we can do that? And shall we go over there now?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Would you
yes.
like to say some things?
Sure. One of the things, again, is that it makes us pause, it makes us stop, it makes us reflect, it shakes up life. And without a shake up, most of us just follow the ruts that are in front of us, or the ruts we've already dug for ourselves, and we just stay in the same ruts. But this is causing people to rethink their lives. And that may be painful, but it's a blessed pain. It's a problem which has great promise behind it. And again, another aspect to that is that it makes us recognize the insufficiency of our usual emotional props. One of the things that in spiritual life we try to cultivate is, again, the sense of dependence on God, dependence on Ishvara. And why do we depend on Ishvara? Because we can always depend on Ishvara. There's nothing else in life which is completely dependable. Everything else is eventually taken away from us.
Yes.
And another thing that we have an opportunity to do now, in the midst of our boredom and the sense of our sense of disorientation, etc., is to give a new order to our lives. That is to find a way to reorganize our lives so that we put our priorities in order. Oftentimes we just go through life and step by step and just do whatever is in front of us to do and don't think much about it. But at times like this, taking up or being forced to take a pause in life makes us prioritize and see what's really important. And once we do that, then we see that, let me give some order to my life. Let me introduce, if I don't already have it, let me introduce spiritual practice. If I do have it, let me give more importance to it. Let me learn how to spend some time reflective in prayer, meditation, or worship as my temperament dictates, time for sacred study, time for service to others. And again, through service, we learn to connect. Service is something that gives us a connection to the larger life of the universe and makes us feel connected to something larger. And so all of these are things that the present situation helps us. One last thing that we mentioned, and then get your further reflections, is that in meditation, what we're trying to do when we sit for meditation is we're trying to do what Corona Ma is forcing us to do now, what the virus is forcing us to do now. That is, we shut out the senses, we shut out the world, we shut out our normal props, our emotional props and all of that, and just try to be. We try to connect to the divine, we try to connect to the self, whether we're on the path of knowledge or the path of devotion, we try to connect with the universal reality and find our stability in that. And so this really is an opportunity to fix the mind in what we're trying to fix the mind in through meditation.
Very well said. Wonderful. When I reflect on this issue, I start seeing it is, but natural to see these paradoxes. And this is described as a war, as a battle. Again, this, goes back to the Bhagavad Gita, which is again set in a battlefield. And the battle is both outwards. Here is this virus, which is very difficult to catch. How are you, it's very easy to catch. But what I'm saying is it's difficult to outwit. So,
Yes, yeah.
So, and then how do you fight against this virus? By staying absolutely still and doing nothing. The paradoxes are just very interesting. Again,
Yes.
it goes back, I think of the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, the one who sees action in inaction, and the one who sees inaction in action. She is the buddhiman, and this is wonderful, because here, we are given an opportunity for stillness. And in this stillness, there are a lot of gifts. The first the prasada of stillness, is to see that, you are such a small little cog in this universe. I mean, you can just see a few NASA pictures for that, and then you see when the earth itself becomes a little pixel, then you see that, and then your home state and your little building where you go to work and your car and, all the things that you take seriously, they are not even visible at this level. So you're smaller than a pixel. And then still, if you withdraw from the workforce, and if so many people in the world have withdrawn from the workforce, interestingly, the world is still going on. It's still going on. It's very clear that you are not holding it up. Neither am I, nor you, nor anybody.
Yes.
If anything, anybody is holding it up, it is Bhagavan. It is already happening. And that itself should be kind of, it gives pause. It gives, it's food for thought, and it gives a lot of humility. There is something, it's like, okay, the one is not all crazy. Like, I have to do this because without me, this will not run. Well, it is running. Even the economies of big countries are running somehow. Even with so many jobless claims, they are running. Everything is running. And then, and this is exactly, what I thought when you quoted, when Bhagavan said, tasya kartaram api mam vidhi, akartaram avyayam. I am, yes. I am the doer of everything, but I don't do anything.
I don't do anything, yes. Yeah.
Yes. And here is an opportunity for us to be like Ishvara. Bhagavan is giving us this gift of just being able to be still and just watch things happening. And then it is also an opportunity to reconnect with loved ones. So now it's not an option to outsource the children. You have to, you have to take care of them. You have to teach them. Schools are closed. And then, You have to, the significant other who had just become plain old other had to now has to become significant again, because you have to you're significantly impacted by them, and you have to make maybe that's why they are called significant other. But that's why you have to make space now. You have to make space. There is a lot of sacrifice. There is also a lot of beauty in surrender and sacrifice. And so I would suggest to everybody to use this time, to see the grandeur of this. Like what else could have just put a reset button on this whole universe and then brought it to this, place. We are brought to our knees, and then we have to just, all we can do is to see the how awesome it is. Instead of seeing it as awful, we have to see it as awesome. And that is where the growth lies, and everything will be taken care of. And this is where we have to have this shraddha and bhakti. And with that, with prayer and with bhakti, it will happen. It will go forward.
Yes, yes. Just one thing on something you said a few minutes ago. That there's in pop psychology, there's the 100-year rule. That is,
Mm,
they say that when you're facing a problem and you feel overwhelmed by the problem, just think, 100 years from now, is anyone going to care?
right.
And the answer is always no. And so,
Yes.
if that's true, why do I allow myself to be obsessed with the things that are happening? Let me deal with them. Yes, I can't
Right.
ignore. If I've got a bill in the mail that I don't know how to pay, I have to find some way to pay it. I have to do something. But it's not the end of the world.
Yes.
And so, let me learn to take things in stride and see things within perspective. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, and then we can go to questions also and get some feedback from you also on what I was going to say, and that is what people can do now in order to help the situation. One, again, as we said a little while ago, uh, finding a way to give order to the sudden sense of chaos that we find when work and activity is taken away from us. Learning to find a way to order my life so that my time is utilized rather than just sitting and binging on television shows and playing endless solitaire. Yes, there's a place for relaxation. That certainly, there's no harm in relaxation. We all need some relaxation. But if we're just engaging in things just because we're bored out of our minds and we are doing it to avoid life and avoid ourselves, then that's a problem. And so if we can organize our lives so that we spend some time in study, spend some time in devotional reading, some time in worship, some time in prayer, sometimes in meditation, sometimes in service, and also some time in physical work. That was something that in the Christian monastic life they discovered long ago, that it kept the mind healthy to do something physical. And so, whether it's gardening or whether it's cleaning or whatever it is, to engage in some sort of physical activity is extremely helpful always, and especially at times like this. So, learning to, when I have suddenly time as not occupied by my usual activities, then let me learn to utilize it.
Very important. Yes. And to that, I would just add two small things: eat well, rest
Yes,
well.
yes,
Self
yes, yes,
care.
yes,
Yeah, self
yes.
care is important, because this sense of disconnection comes from, just being on the run. And so
Ah,
here,
yes.
we learn to stop. We don't live life in violent metaphors. Just jump into the shower, grab a bite to eat, rush out of the door, beat the traffic, hit the road. This is how we live. And then
Ah,
come
yes,
back,
yes.
nuke something. These are all violent metaphors, and then you crash. Now we don't have to do that. You can
Yes, yes.
relax.
Ah,
No
yes,
Hindu
yes.
should jump into the shower. No Hindu should grab a bite to eat. This is all yajna. We slow
Ah,
down
yes,
enough
yes,
to
yes.
sort of, make a nice meal and eat with one another, and, taste what is going in, because we have the time. So
Yes.
mindful consumption, and and a kind of an engaged life, and a lot of what's that, togetherness and joy. There is joy in all this.
Yes, yes, yes. Very well said.
So
So,
Swamiji,
yes.
Swamiji, can I start asking some questions? I just have to say that Swamiji, I think you may have just rattled off a daily dialogue. So I'm going to be very mindful of the words that I use in describing how I'm running through my day. But that was a beautiful foundation. And we have many questions. I will try to get to as many as we can. And I'll also try to kind of organize them the best that I can, taking these coming in very quickly. But there's two questions, and maybe Swamiji, you can answer the first part, and Swamiji, you can answer the second. The first part is from Mukesh from San Diego. Swamiji, he
Yes.
says, hello and pranam. And he says, loss of life, leaving your loved ones at the hospital and never seeing them again, even during the funeral, is a very painful experience, as is not being able to perform our Hindu rituals of last rites. What can one do to cope with this pain? And then this is a second question that then maybe Swaminiji can answer, is that it's also related to loss of life. But how can we begin to understand the loss of many family members at the same time, in one family due to coronavirus? Is that karma? So Swamiji and then Swaminiji.
Yes, Namaste, Mukesh. Uh, uh, that is, as I said at the beginning of this dialogue, we should never minimize the real difficulties that many people are facing. Yes, we can learn to take everything as a gift, but that's not said lightly. That doesn't mean take everything as something that's meant to please me and make me happy in the superficial sense. And so when we are facing loss of life, and at times like this, when social distancing is enforced and we're not able to do the things that we would like to do, we're not able perhaps to be with the loved one who is passing away because we're not allowed because of social distancing, etc. Certainly that's a great difficulty that any of us would feel. So one thing is we have to learn in life to have real feelings. That is, not to try to smooth over everything to make everything nice, but to recognize that yes, sadness is also a part of life. Suffering is also a part of life. Uh, uh, the experience of disadvantage and inability, that's also a part of life. And so that doesn't mean in the midst of inability or suffering or seeing someone pass away that you love that you're supposed to be happy. No, that's not the meaning at all. Even a great soul like Sri Ramakrishna, when his nephew Akshay passed away, at first he clapped and danced because he saw that Akshay's soul was liberated from the body. But then for 2 days after that, he wept because he wouldn't see his nephew anymore. And so when we're facing a situation like that, the death of loved ones, and we can't be there with them, we can't perform the shraddha or other last rites that we want to perform for them, then we can always pray for them. So first, hold them in love and speak to them. You're not with them, you're at a distance. If they're still alive, then speak to them from a distance, meaning you know that they can't hear you, you may be miles away, but still you can speak to them, and the intent of your feeling and your thought will reach them. After they pass away, still speak to them. In the Hindu tradition, it's believed that for some days after a person passes away, and it's a matter of experience also for some people. People are still in touch with their loved ones in a special way before they continue their journey. And so speak to them, tell them what you wanted to tell them but couldn't because you were isolated from them. Pray for them. Even not that we have to back up every spiritual teaching by modern statistical studies, but even at Harvard, they've done statistical studies to show that prayer for a person who doesn't even know they're being prayed for actually statistically helps the person. And so pray for them, talk to them, tell them what you always wanted to tell them, especially after the person has died for some days. They are receptive and aware of the ones that they loved, and get the messages consciously that you give to them. And so again, we have to accept life as it comes to us. We have to accept the circumstances, but we're not left without recourse.
Thank you, Swamiji. I will keep the answers very brief so that we can get to the maximum number of questions. Losing multiple family members, I read something like that on the news a couple of weeks ago, where multiple members in the family had passed away, and that is also karma. It is some very heavy karma for the people who are survivors of this kind of, to have to bear with this kind of a loss, because even losing one person is so difficult, and then you have so many people at once having to deal with it. It is some kind of a karma. And so therefore there is we have, as Swamiji said, one has to be able to pray for the grace and the courage to be with it. And even though you don't have rituals are not possible, you can do something at home, some kind of a closure. And we have a whole year in the Hindu tradition. We have a whole year, we give ourselves a whole year to mourn. And so there are different things that happen on the 11th day, 13th day, 16th day, monthly rituals to all the way. And so something like that, to connect, to pray, to to remember them. So we take the time to grieve, and grief is something that you have to go through and resolve.
So the next two questions I'm also going to put together, and it doesn't matter, either one of you can answer it. But one is that, is there a value in addressing the root cause of coronavirus? And I think kind of related, that, this Sonal understands that the emphasis on the silver lining, that's important, but doesn't the awfulness of all of this, isn't that what really motivates us to find solutions?
Well, I will just respond briefly and then turn it over to Swamiji so that he will have a chance to say something as well. The last one struck me. Isn't the awfulness motivates? Well, perhaps the awfulness is motivates, but I don't like to see it as awfulness. It's more of a sense of just being stopped. Yes, it is awful. What is happening is very difficult. Especially when we look at this very rich country, and then there are no masks in the richest country in the world, and the frontline health workers are putting their lives in danger every day. It is awful. And there are so many such issues that are awful. And yes, it sometimes the difficult things help us to wake up. So to wake up in the time of the crisis, but at the same time to stick at this place of awfulness and victimization is again making staying in the bubble of your personal projections and personal reality. This is what if anything, I hope this conversation has done, is to see oneself as as included in the whole, and to have to be able to have that objectivity, to be able to see that one is not targeted, and that there is some kind of a wisdom behind it.
Yes, and in tune with that, in the Bhagavad Gita, which we keep turning back to, because the Gita is the perfect metaphor for life itself. The first chapter is the Vishara Yoga. Vishara Yogo Nama Pratamodhyaya, the first chapter, known as the Yoga of Sadness. And so it was the sadness of Arjuna, the crisis that he faced, which allowed him to open to Sri Krishna. But the important thing is, as Swamini was saying, is that Arjuna didn't stay in the awfulness of his situation. It was the awfulness of the situation which made him stop and become open to the influence of Sri Krishna. So the purpose of the awfulness was not to stay there and to hold on to it. It was to open him up, to make him stop, to pause, and then to be receptive, and then to be lifted out of that. So we often think that by fear, by awful, by suffering, by all of that, getting worked up over things, that we're going to be more effective. No, we're not. We're much more effective when the mind is calm and alert, not calm and sleepy, but calm and alert. Just one example, we had a Swami, an English Swami in Trabuco Canyon, California for many years. And he had been a medic in the British Army, and he spent the whole of World War II in a Japanese prison camp as a prisoner. And the only reason he wasn't executed was that he was trained as a medic, and they needed medics in the prison camps. And so at Trabuco, when something would happen, somebody would have an accident and have to be taken to the hospital or something, everybody would be all excited. But this Swami would just come, see the situation, and just handle it appropriately. No excitement, no drama, but he was the one who was effective, not the ones who got all upset. And so the awfulness, yes, it may motivate us to seek a cure from the disease, but it's not the person who's suffering from the awfulness who does that. It's the person who sees the tragedy and says, let me find something that will help others.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji. Here's another question. How can we learn to find joy in this imposed Vanprasthashram way of life when we're used to a highly materialistic life in the West?
Well, I'll start
Would you like me to go first, or would...
You know what, how about we do this? Swamiji, you can take this one, and I'll give the next question to Swamiji.
Okay.
That way
So,
we can take the question.
yeah, that way it can be a little more efficient. Yes. So, I think some of this has already been answered, So in this enforced vanaprastha, you are calling it, I'm directly going one more step further and calling it enforced sannyasa, See the humor in it, see the paradox and see the humor. And actually, as you see the humor, and one can see very clearly how little one needs to get on in the life, and how little one needs. And if something is not available, then there is, the mind is very creative, and then it makes do. And this is how the grandmothers and the great grandmothers in the tradition, they would think of cooking something, and then something is not available, the shop is closed, and in those days they did not have all this instantly you can get things, a drone would drop it off on your front lawn. All this was not there, and so they would manage. And some very creative dishes came as a result of this. So from this kitchen example, we can see this is a very tangible material example. It is not some kind of a big, some kind of an engineering thing. It is a very practical, pragmatic example. And so see how you can be creative, see how you can fulfill your needs, and then it's okay to grieve whatever you are missing. It's all right, but it's okay to grieve and then move past it, because again the mind is usually addicted to certain things because of habit. And this is a lovely time to flip the habits, and then if one is mindful, one can see that how did this habit come, how did this habit come, and I really don't need this. And sometimes what happens is that we find that the habit has come out of some because my mother did it this way, my father did it this way. It is just it's a familial habit, it's a social habit, and these can be shed because you are not your family. You are connected to your family, but you're your own person. And so take the time to discover that, and that's the best gift.
Okay, good advice there. To Swamiji, how do we deal with fear? Many listeners are physicians or frontline workers that are interacting with patients or elderly, with volunteers taking food to them, and they fear that they may get sick or they may get others. So and then there's a constant news cycle. So what sadhana or what practices can we do to deal with fear?
Yes, that's a very good question and a very difficult question, because fear is something which is one of the hardest emotions to deal with. And so, in a situation like this, say, take the example that the questioner used of medical workers who have to work with the sick and they're afraid themselves, and perhaps they don't have, as many don't have now, they don't have the proper protective equipment. And so, there's no easy way out of this. The only way out of it is a real way. And that real way is the spiritual way, and that is difficult. But it is possible. And that is to, first of all, to learn just to pay attention to that which I have to do, that I'm a medical person, there's a person suffering, and so I will do the best I can for this person in spite of the fact that I can't protect myself the way that I know I should. Of course, if I can protect myself better, then do that. But we're assuming that you can't, because many can't right now. Then to recognize that this person needs my help, I'm going to help them, and I have to leave the rest to God. If God wants me to come out of this, or if it's my time to go, I have to be all right with both. Now, that's a hard statement. That's not a statement I make easily, to say that if my time has come, I'm going to maybe I will catch the disease and I will die. Yes, that's a possibility. And that's not an easy possibility. So I don't say it lightly. But that's one of the benefits, and again, not happy benefits, but one of the deep benefits that a situation like this has, is that it makes us confront questions like this. Am I ready to help another person when I can help them, but I know that it's at a risk to my own life? Not at the risk of wasting a few minutes or wasting a few dollars or somebody boring me with their conversation I don't want to listen to. No. Am I ready to help them, and maybe at the cost of my own life? If I can do that, as Swami Vivekananda used to say, that if you can really do that, then you'll be free. You'll be spiritually free, because you've overcome the greatest fear of all, the fear of death. And so again, that's a big thing. I'm not taking it lightly at all, not passing it off as just a platitude or something. It's a real problem. But if we can do that, and if we're called to do that, and we can do it, then we find that we have overcome the greatest fear in life.
Okay, we'll take one more question, and this is from Lori G. I'm in my 60s and I'm finding it easier to navigate this pandemic season, even though it's my first. Finding it very easy to stay in the present as the future is totally uncertain. My youngest daughter, however, who's in her 20s, is having the hardest time with reconciling this new reality. She's really angry things are shut down because she's worried about making money to pay rent, etc. What do you think about the differences across generations? Swami Niji?
Oh, it is for me? Okay.
Yes.
Well, Laurie, this I can appreciate. There is a big generation gap here. And it is true, those of us who are older, it's easier to sit, easier relatively to sit still. It is easier to come to a place of acceptance. But for those who are younger, because there is the generation gap means that there is still that feeling of doership, which is very, very strong. So when there is a strong sense of doership, then the frustration is also equally strong, because then there is nothing to do. So that is, basically what it is. And so if I can suggest, that you can work with your daughter to do some pranayama, because sometimes meditation is also hard, but even just 1 minute meditation, the acronym for that is OM, OMM. So we can have 1 minute meditation. We can have some simple pranayama, where you alternate nostril breathing, some kind of a mindful breathing. And so all that has effects, when you just watch the mind for even a minute, and when you just say a mantra, simple one, Om Namah Shivaya, whatever it is, and when you breathe consciously, it has an effect over the mind and how it helps. And so all over the YouTube and other places, there are so many videos about pranayama and everything. So, but then if you direct her to the videos, she may not be ready to start on her own, because that is not something that will attract immediately. And so I would suggest you learn a few things and you do it with her. So this will be, mother daughter quality time, and it will make her feel loved, and it will make her feel like you're caring enough to do all these things with her, not just sending her a link via a text or an email and say, okay, do this. But here you are taking the trouble to do it with her. This is how you do it. And then that way, there is a bonding, and then it will be successful. I will also pray for her.
Thank you, Swaminiji. So we could go on for a long time. I certainly could, but we know that it's getting late on the East Coast. So I want to offer my deepest pranams and gratitude to the two of you for sharing uh, what what we could take from you in this hour, and there's so much more. I would encourage everyone who's listening that you can visit the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston's website to hear and read more from Swamiji. And you can also look for Arshvidya in Eugene, Oregon, and read and listen to more from Swaminiji. As you heard, there's a lot to learn, and there's great comfort in knowing that our ancient tradition still has such great relevance in our lives today, and especially when this pandemic is affecting each and every one of us in very similar ways. So I thank you again. I want to remind all the listeners out there to not miss out on next week's doubleheader. We have Dr. Akhil Palanisamy, who will be talking about building immunity with Ayurveda and integrative medicine. That is Monday, April 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern for 1 hour. And then on Thursday, we have an Ayurvedic cooking demonstration with Divya Alter of Divya's Kitchen in New York City. And that is Thursday, April 16th at 8 p.m. The Hindu American Foundation is here for you. We are still working hard, so please do consider supporting our work so that we can continue to bring you quality programming that's relevant. And to all of you, namaste, stay healthy, stay safe, be well. Namaste.
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 Thank you. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you.
Om.
Om Tat Sat.